couple of fundamental facts that has been gleaned in the past 60 years. That the ingredients, if you had asked your chemistry teacher 50 years ago, once you looked at that mysterious chart of boxes that sat in front of your class, the periodic table of elements, where did those elements come from? The chemistry teacher would actually not have an answer for you. They'll say, well, you dig them out of the earth. That's not where they come from. It took modern astrophysics to determine the origin of the chemical elements. We observe stars. We know what goes on in their center. They explode, laying bare their contents. And what we have discovered is that the elements of the periodic table, that which we are made of, derive from the actions of stars that have manufactured the elements, exploded, scattered their enriched guts across the galaxy, contaminating or enriching gas clouds that then form a next generation of stars populated by planets and possibly life. And so, when you look at the ingredients of the universe, the number one ingredient is hydrogen. Next is helium. Next is hydrogen, helium, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen. Those are the top ingredients in the universe. So you say, well, okay, that's kind of cool. Well, and you look at Earth, because we like thinking of ourselves as special, we say, oh, we're special. But what are we made of? Well, what's the number one sort of molecule in the body? It's water. Well, what's water made of? H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen. In fact, if you rank the elements in the human body, with the exception of helium, which is chemically inert, useless to you for any reason other than just to inhale it and sound like Mickey Mouse. Hey, number one in the human body is hydrogen. Matches the universe. Number two is oxygen. Matches the universe. Number three, carbon. Matches the universe. Number four, nitrogen. Matches the universe. And for each of us, the fifth element, other, is the same in both places. Okay? Other. So, we learned in the last 50 years that, of course, not only do we exist in this universe, it is the universe itself that exists within us. And had we been made of some rare isotope of bismuth, you would have arguments, hey, we're something special. But there are people who are upset by that fact, saying, well, that mean we're not special? Well, I think it's special in another kind of way. Because when you look up at the night sky, it's no longer we're here and that's there. It's that we are part of that. And that association, for me, is actually quite enlightening and ennobling and enriching. In fact, it's almost spiritual, looking up at the night sky and finding a sense of belonging.
Now, when you talk about these things, somebody in the audience must come up, I assume, and say, well, we only understand 4% of this stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
So
I love it.
How is that different from Bill O'Reilly saying, well, in that case, the rest of it's garden? You guys are just expounding beliefs here. You've got no evidence for the 96%.
The difference is, we do understand the tides. The tides are part of the 4% we understand. So Bill O'Reilly is giving a list of things that are fully understood. If he had given a list of things that are not understood, okay, that would be a different reaction. And it would be less susceptible to comedic mockery than saying, tides come in and out, you can't explain that. It's like, yes, we can. We've known that one for the last couple of 100 years. Give me a better example. So if he said, there's dark matter and there's dark energy forcing an expansion of the universe so fast that it's accelerating. You can't explain that. Right. We can't explain it. Okay. I don't think he knows enough physics to be able to tell us what it is we don't understand yet. That would have been a more interesting exchange with the atheist guy. I forgot his name, forgive me, but the guy who he was interviewing. Now, if he wants to use that as evidence for God, but then we just have to come back and say, well, doesn't mean if you don't understand something and the community of physicists don't understand it, understand it, that means God did it? Is that how you want to play this game? Because if it is, here's a list of the things in the past that the physicists at the time didn't understand. And a talk show you might have conducted 200 years ago would have said, the planets do retrograde? Can't understand that, must be a God. And we'd say, you're right. And then 10 years later, we understand it, so what do you do? So if that's how you want to invoke your evidence for God, then God is an ever-receding pocket of scientific ignorance that's getting smaller and smaller and smaller as time moves on. Behavior, as exhibited by humans versus other animals. We've defined that to be intelligent, but would some other species make the same assessment? I think about this often. We have not successfully communicated in any meaningful way with any other species on Earth. A few hand gestures maybe, that's it. We haven't exchanged any kind of meaningful thoughts. Even species that are genetically similar to us, such as chimpanzees. So now let's go to some other planet, some other life form, and the audacity for us to even suggest that we would be able to communicate with it when there's no DNA in common at all. We can't communicate with other life with common DNA. Go to another planet and say, well, we're intelligent solely so we can communicate with each other? No, that's hubristic to presume that we are the measure of the capacity to communicate. What I've noticed over the decades that I've paid attention to this, the other animals in the animal kingdom, whenever we presume some level of intelligence for them, further research shows that they're smarter than we ever thought, or cleverer than we ever gave them credit for being. Humans aren't as good as we should be in our capacity to empathize with feelings and thoughts of others, be they humans or other animals on Earth. So maybe part of our formal education should be training in empathy. Imagine how different the world would be if, in fact, that were reading, writing, arithmetic, empathy. My kids, they're perfectly happy watching animal shows on our large flat panel television without the need to run to a circus and see shackled animals walk around in circles. I think most children take very kindly to animals, and I've always remarked, not really understanding why it's so, but it clearly works, that most children's programming involves talking animals, bringing lessons to children rather than people. Something must happen after childhood for those who then feel compelled to disrespect the very animals that taught them how to spell or how to read. I spent a lot of my early life just trying to get into the head of a dog and try to understand their emotions. And I think that changed me for the better. Because every time I look at an animal, I just think, I wonder what they're thinking about. Animals, so they behave in funny ways, and some of the highest hit YouTube clips are animals behaving in funny ways, usually in their interaction with their owners. I think that kind of exposure to the animal kingdom is a good thing, and people who separate themselves from that experience, it can't be good. Because then if you don't think about it, it's easy to then discount it or to not care. And we've already seen how humans behave when you've decided that you don't care. It's ugly.
What is beautiful about it to you?
It's simple. It's simple, yet it accounts for hugely complex things. And for me, that is where the beauty lies in the truth.
No.
If I had to give you a complex theory to understand a complex phenomenon, send me home. Because what's the point? Well, now, there's no tablet in the sky that said it had to be simple to end up being complex. That's just a remarkable fact about the universe. So why not celebrate it? The fact that pi, right?
Let's say the numbers together. 3.1415926.
Well, we got a few.
That's pretty good. That's a nerd fest.
We got a geek thing going on over there.
Not bad.
The fact that you take a circle of any size, a circle the size of the universe itself, and divide it by its own radius, and you get that number, that's beautiful. I have to pause, and I get misty thinking of that. It's not. That's just another one. That the atoms and molecules in your body are traceable to the crucibles in the centers of stars that manufactured these elements over its lifespan, when unstable, on death, exploding its enriched guts across the galaxy, scattering it into gas clouds that would ultimately collapse and make a star and have the right ingredients to make planets and people. Which means we are part of this universe. As I've said many times, and this goes back, not only are we in the universe is in us. That is a profound concept. And I think it's the greatest gift that astrophysics gave culture in the 20th century. There's a research paper in 1957, and I say that because one of the authors just died like 2 days ago, Jeff Burbidge. Burbidge, Fowler, and Hoyle. One of the most famous research papers that no one ever heard of. You know why, I think? Because it had 4 authors, not just one, and it took decades to figure out, and it wasn't just somebody burning the midnight oil, so it doesn't lend itself to poetry or screenplays, because it's a collaboration, so nobody wrote about it. But we knew that we are star stuff. We knew that we are stardust at the middle of the 20th century. That connects us to the universe like no other fact. That's beautiful. I know a lot of cool stuff.
Why?
Because when I'm with someone and they ask me about the universe, I say I'm not interested in the universe because I already know about it. I want to find out what you do.
Okay.
And then I learn about what people do. I don't grow up and only ever talk about the universe.
Well, so let's talk about that. You have a huge appetite for being intellectually curious.
Oh, yeah.
Where did that come from?
Well, it is contained within any adult who has not grown up.
So you're still a big child.
I'm still a kid. And I think that's true for most, if not every single person who carries scientist as a title. Because what does a kid do? A kid turns over rocks and explores and pokes things. And it takes foresight for an adult to allow that, recognizing that these explorations that usually end up in stuff that's broken are actually experiments on the forces of nature that surround us. Kids don't worry about the weather. Oh, it's raining, let's go out and get wet. No, you'll get your clothes dirty. Oh, there's a mud puddle there, let me jump into it with 2 feet. No, everything is a no. Every time it's snowing outside, now I have to remind myself, but I do open my mouth and catch snowflakes in it. Just like kids. It's a reminder of what I don't want to lose as I get older. Because that is an inherent state of curiosity that I think we're born with. And just get it beaten out of us because it's not mature to jump 2 feet into puddles.
Are we alone in the universe? We're made of the most common ingredients there are. And our chemistry is based on carbon. Carbon is the most chemically active ingredient in the entire periodic table. If you were to find a chemistry on which to base something really complex called life, you would base it on carbon. Carbon is like the 4th most abundant ingredient in the universe. It's not rare. You can make more molecules out of carbon than you can all other kinds of molecules combined. So if we ask ourselves, are we alone in the universe? It would be, in spite of my diatribe about UFOs, I tell you in the same breath that it would be inexcusably egocentric to suggest that we are alone in the cosmos. The chemistry is too rich to declare that. The universe too vast. There are more stars in the universe than grains of sand in all the beaches of the world. There are more stars in the universe than all the sounds and words ever uttered by all humans who have ever lived. To say we're alone in the universe. No, we haven't found life outside of Earth yet. We're looking, haven't looked very far yet. Galaxies this big, we looked about that far. But we're looking. And how about life on Earth? How is it hard to form? Just because we don't know how to do it in the lab doesn't mean nature had problems. So it may be, given that information, that given the right ingredients, which are everywhere, life may be inevitable, an inevitable consequence of complex chemistry. if that's the case, we look around our own solar system, we look at Mars. All the evidence suggests that Mars was once a wet, fertile place, an oasis. There are dried riverbeds and floodplains and river deltas and meandering rivers. It's all bone dry now. Something bad happened on Mars. Some knobs got turned in its environment that left it the way it is right now. Some bad knobs got turned on Venus, too. Runaway greenhouse effect. You saw the clip on that. 900 degrees Fahrenheit on Venus. Some knobs got turned there, too. People say, why spend money up there when we spend it? Because up there we might learn about down here, okay? I don't want a runaway greenhouse effect here. Venus is the best example in the solar system of a planet gone bad. Let's learn about that first. So, it turns out we learned that asteroid impacts, when they hit, can cast rocks in their surrounding areas into space with escape velocity, so they never come back to the planet from which it was launched. If Mars was wet and fertile before Earth was, as all evidence suggests, and if Mars had life before Earth had life, it is possible for there to have been bacterial stowaways in the nooks and crannies of the rocks that were cast into space. There's some hardy bacteria that we already know exists on Earth. Survives extreme temperatures, pressures, freeze-dried, reconstituted, radiation. The hostile environment of space would be nothing to some of these bacteria. It may be that life on Earth was seeded by bacterial stowaways on rocks that were cast free from Mars. This is a plausible scenario that's called panspermia, the transference of life from one planet to the next. If that's the case, that makes all of us descendants of Martians. I want to alert you in advance. Now, let me give you a disturbing thought. A fascinatingly disturbing thought, and we'll leave you on that note. If you look at our closest genetic relative to human beings, it would be the chimpanzee. We share like 98+% identical DNA. We are smarter than a chimpanzee. So let's invent a measure of intelligence that makes humans unique. Let's say intelligence is your ability to like compose poetry, symphonies, do art, math, and science, let's say, okay? Let's make that as the arbitrary definition of intelligence for the moment. Chimps can't do any of that. Yet we share 98, 99% identical DNA, okay? The most brilliant chimp there ever was maybe can do a little bit of sign language. Well, our toddlers can do that. Toddlers. So, here's what concerns me deeply. Deeply. Everything that we are that distinguishes us from chimps emerges from that 1% difference in DNA. It has to, because that's the difference. The Hubble telescope, these grand... That's in that 1%. Maybe everything that we are that is not the chimp is not as smart compared to the chimp as we tell ourselves it is. Maybe the difference between constructing and launching a Hubble telescope and a chimp combining two finger motions as sign language, maybe that difference is not all that great. We tell ourselves it is, just the same way we label our books optical illusions. We tell ourselves it's a lot. Maybe it's almost nothing. How would we decide that? Imagine another life form that's 1% different from us in the direction that we are different from the chimp. Think about that. We got 1% difference and we're building the Hubble telescope. Go another 1%. What are we to they? We would be drooling, blithering idiots in their presence. That's what we would be. They would take Stephen Hawking and roll him in front of their primate researchers and say, well, this one is like the most brilliant among them because he can do sort of astrophysics in his head. Oh, isn't that cute? Little Johnny can do that too. Oh, that's so nice. Oh, in fact, Johnny just did that. Let me get it. It's on the refrigerator door. Here he is. He did it in his elementary school class. Think about how smart they would be. Quantum mechanics would be intuitive to their toddlers. Whole symphonies would be written by their children, and like I said, just put up on the refrigerator door the way our pasta collages are on our refrigerator doors. So the notion that we're going to find some intelligent life and have a conversation with it? When was the last time you stopped to have a conversation with a worm? Or bird? Although you might have had a conversation, but I don't think you expected an answer, all right? So, we don't have conversations with any other species on Earth with whom we have DNA in common. To believe that some intelligent other species is going to be interested in us enough to have a conversation? They'll look at our Hubble telescope and say, oh, isn't that quaint? Look at what they're doing. So I lay awake at nights wondering whether simply we as a species are simply too stupid to figure out the universe that we're investigating. And maybe we need some other species, 1% smarter than we are, for which string theory would be intuitive, for which all the greatest mysteries of the universe, from dark matter, dark energy, the origins of life, and all the frontiers of our thought would be something that they would just self-intuit. I'm jealous of that possibility, because I want to be around for those discoveries.
But Congress is considering pulling the plug on the James Webb Space Telescope, which is the successor.
Don't get me started.
No, I want to get you started. This is the successor to the Hubble, and they say it can peer into the universe and maybe see the moment when the universe was born. I don't even know how that happens. But it costs $6.8 billion, which, by the way, the same amount that it cost to be in Afghanistan for 1 month. So either way, we're sinking money into a black hole. But they're thinking of pulling the plug on this, and it just says to me, why can't we, and I'm not usually a big supporter of these kind of things, but compared to Afghanistan, compared to the tax cuts for the billionaires,
compared to
it seems like we won't do anything that's for the public good.
Well, first of all, let's clarify what the NASA budget is. Do you realize that the $850 billion, what was it, with the banks?
TARP.
Yes.
Bailout.
The bailout, the bank bailout. That sum of money
Could reach Venus.
That sum of money is greater than the entire 50-year running budget of NASA.
Wow.
And so when someone says we don't have enough money for this space probe, I'm asking, no, it's not that you don't have enough money. It's that the distribution of money that you're spending is warped in some way, that you are removing the only thing that gives people something to dream about tomorrow. You remember the 60s? You remember the 60s and 70s? You didn't have to go more than a week before there's an article in Life magazine, the home of tomorrow, the city of tomorrow, transportation of tomorrow. All that ended in the 1970s. After we stopped going to the moon, it all ended. We stopped dreaming. And so I worry that decisions that Congress makes doesn't factor in the consequences of those decisions on tomorrow. Tomorrow's gone.
You know what?
They're playing for tomorrow, metaphoric tomorrow, not the literal tomorrow. They're playing for the quarterly report. They're playing for the next election cycle, and that is mortgaging the actual future of this nation. The rest of the country, the rest of the world is going to be passers-by. The Planets Today is a marvelous work of fiction. Oh, yes. Yes, there is no such thing as Planet Nimburu or whatever they say. It's just fiction. and they cite sources that cite NASA sources. They don't cite NASA. Check the websites, you'll see. And it's all related to the doomsday predictions of the year 2012. Yes, that's what you're getting at. That's behind your question, isn't it? Yes. 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 You want to know if the world is going to end on December 21st, 2012. Because the same website that tells you about Planet X, this secret planet that has a strongly elliptical orbit that will come into our zone in 2012 and knock Earth off its axis, combined with, on December 21st, 2012, that the center of the galaxy, the sun and the Earth will come into perfect alignment, and the excess gravity will then also tip Earth off its axis, and it'll be end of the world as we know it. This is what these web pages will tell you. Turns out, if you go to December 21st and look at the star charts, it's true. The center of the galaxy, the sun and the Earth, will come into perfect alignment. It will. It's true. It's true. What the site does not tell you is that that happens every year on December 21st.
Your heroes in your field.
Yeah, I'm not very hero-driven or role model-driven. In fact, I think role model is overrated. In fact, I think it's a bad concept. Typically, a role model is someone who resembles your profile in some fundamental way, and you want to follow their steps to become what they are. Okay, so there I am at age 11 in 1969, and I'm going to find a black astrophysicist who grew up in the Bronx. No, there aren't any. So am I going to limit my options in life because maybe I'm going to do something where I'm the first? No. The problem with role models today is you have these athletic role models, and then they have steroids or drugs or whatever. And then the people who put them up as role models then worry that the kids who saw them as role models now want to do drugs. That's just, no. No. If you like their athletics, like their athletics. Carve that out and put it there and reach for that. Don't be the rest of what they are. Who knows what the rest of what they are is? I may have been one of the last people in the world to see the film, to pay to go to the movies to see the film The Titanic. Okay? I was like one of 5 people in the theater at the time. I figured time came, I got to see the movie. Everybody else seeing the movie 3 times, I should at least see it once. So I'm there watching it. There it goes, fine. Much about this movie, to remind you, was widely marketed as having precisely captured the details of the ship. Because Jim Cameron, the director, hired this submersible, went down, found the ship, okay, looked at the designs of the wall sconces and the china patterns and the staterooms, captured all of that in his movie. So here's somebody who cares about detail. I'm going to hold them accountable. So, watching the movie, okay? The ship sinks. So I gave away the... Sorry. In case anybody out there didn't know. We know the day, the time, the longitude, the latitude, the date, the year. We know everything about how, when, and where that ship sank. Okay? There's Kate Winslet on the plank, singing deliriously as her boyfriend just sinks to the depths of the ocean. Why didn't he try to get on there with her? You know, you think they could have worked something out? You think? There she is looking up. There is only one sky she should have been looking at. And it was the wrong sky. Worse than that. It was not only the wrong sky, the left half of the sky was a mirror reflection of the right half of the sky. So it was not only wrong, it was lazy. And I'm thinking, this is wrong. Because we notice, you own stuff like this, you know the sky. Right, you know the sky?
You know that the sky is your backyard. If it's not, it should be. And for a couple of dollars, you can buy a planetarium program on your computer. Check out the sky when the Titanic sank. It was not Jim Cameron's sky. Right. So I pulled out my finest of letterhead, the one that has all the degrees and all the titles. I wrote a letter to Jim Cameron, politely saying, "How could you mess up the sky?" Got no reply. No reply. 5 years later, I'm on a committee. I'm on a committee that intersects a committee that he's on. He was an advisor to NASA for a while, by the way. Not about the sky, about other things. About exploration, okay? He's a big explorer, by the way. And so, I'm in the room with him. I said, here's the big chance. So I said, Mr. Cameron, I wrote a letter to you some years ago. He never got it. I said, did you know that your sky was just wrong? And we know what that sky was. And everything else about your movie was so accurate. And he says, I didn't know that. I didn't know. In fact, that happened in post-production. And that was all he said. And I was just completely immature about it. I wanted him to grovel for forgiveness at my feet. But he didn't do that. And so somehow I was deeply unsatisfied by this. 3 years after that, he gets an award from Wired magazine. They rent out our planetarium to give it to him. Now he's in my place, all right? So in my irrational immaturity, I bring the subject up again. All right, it turns out I was invited to a dinner with him after that event. There were only 8 of us, he and a few of his friends. The wine is pouring, we're all kind of chilling. So I said, here we go. I said, Jim, because now I can call him Jim. Jim, I wrote you, this story will end, I promise, very shortly. I said, I wrote you a letter about the sky, and you didn't get it right, and why? How could you do that? And he answered. He said, well, last I checked, Titanic worldwide has grossed $1.3 billion. Imagine how much more it would have grossed had I gotten the sky correct. I was like, I couldn't leave well enough alone. That just shut me up. I said, I can't follow that. Nothing I can do. So I went home, tail between my legs. 2 months later, I get a phone call from some guy. I forgot his name. Some guy called me up. Said, hello. I said, hello. He said, I work post-production in Jim Cameron's studios. He's releasing a 10-year anniversary director's cut of the movie, and he's adding new footage, and he tells me you have a sky he can use. I said, yes!